Hello and welcome to Dinis YouTube podcast show. Once again, continuing profiling fantastic people that inspire us and push our boundaries. And today, in partnership with IBM Tech Exchange Summit, MA 2024. Data, a lot of people say, is the new oil, but I would say that is right now the water flow and the pipelines that everyone consumes. And we need new levels of water, fresh water, cold water, or the tea, and we can apply the same metaphor to the water. So I'm quite excited to bring to the series Prayson Daniel, that is the Principal Data Scientist and Director of Transformation Lab at NTT Data. Prayson, great to have you here.
Yeah, thank
I'm
you
quite
so
excited.
Much. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
So you have a fantastic background that goes from theology to philosophy and, of course, hardcore data and a lot of things in terms of digital transformation. So tell us a bit about that background.
It's such a transformative background, actually, which shaped who we are. Just like when we started with the introduction, we talked about data is a new oil. So when I hear something like that, given my philosophical background, I have all these triggers, and I think we'll come to it as we start speaking about how I view the world. Because for me, I think where to look at it, I think people are the new oil, and the people who work for you, and data is just like I usually say, like, data can tell any story we want it to tell. If you heard this, if you torture your data good enough, it will confess to anything, because they are just data, but it's human who start knowing how to use that data that transform it to oil. But for me, I will say maybe it's your people that are actually oil when they're equipped with the data. So there's that connection, because data by itself is just numbers, which tells us nothing, but a combination with a beautiful mind, then they transform that into something else. So that is my background in philosophy, that trying to look the world in a different way. So I did not know who I wanted to be when I started my career. I started first as a pilot, so I flew for 2 years. Then that was not me. Then I had this existential crisis. That means identity. Who am I? Do we matter within this big world? This led me to philosophy and theology. And I'm so thankful that that's where I started before going into technology. Because unlike most of my friends that have background in computer science, they can never think outside the box of numbers and algorithm. But given that I have this, what you call an accidental background in another discipline, bringing that into technology and machine learning and all this just shapes things a bit more in a more exciting way, I'll say.
Now that brings me to a lot of questions, and it's very inspiring. So one of the things you have is that, and I love that in your presentation, is I join missions to make our world more human by augmenting our abilities with machines. No curriculum vitae, no cover letter. Show me your mission.
Yes.
So how do you apply this to data?
Yeah, so
and to your work, of course.
Yeah, so my biggest aim when we work is I'm always what you call, like, I'm a human first. So whenever we build a different algorithm or whenever we build solution, I start with people. Like, I will start with the client. Like, what are you trying to do? Let's start by understanding that. So instead of looking at data, I start with people. And then when you know what you're supposed to do, then you start asking, do we have data to answer that question? And then, because in the end, it's not about algorithm, it's not about data. In the end, it's how do we augment us in solving our problem. It could be like in living better, or in generating more profit, or so like, how do we use what we have to augment what we are, right? Because so So in the end, we end up not building things for building's sake, but how they're transforming us. And there comes the mission. Like, what is your mission? Like, show me the mission. Show me where we're going. And then from there on, then we can bring data and algorithm to help you succeed in accomplishing that mission.
So we are at the moment in a kind of a crossroad that it touches that, first of all, of course, there's I would say the rationale of the data, and then the rationale of the data. So especially if you look at geopolitics and cultural backgrounds, and it becomes a bit philosophical. But if you are a company, you need to focus on the data. But for instance, if you look at some of the financial things happening in the capital markets, or at least especially in politics, sometimes data is, I would say, pushed towards one background or towards, you color in a different way, let's put it that way. So as a computer scientist and as well a data scientist, how do you look at these kind of elements of the ethics around data?
Yeah.
And how we can actually get out of I would say, the nuances that come out of the geopolitics or the cultural background, and as well as an African living in a Western country that is probably one of the most politically correct. How you look at all these different things as well.
Yeah, I think whenever we do machine learning, or whenever we start applying algorithm, I think the best step is to almost take a step back and start asking, what is the mechanism that generated the data? So in the Bayesian modeling, right, you will first collect your priors, like what has happened, in order for you to model something that will give you the posterior, given that the data. So you will start populating the data into your priors to update your beliefs, right? So in this case, when we do kind of this simulation, we are trying to learn what is the mechanism that has generated this data. And in many cases, like today, when we work with different data, we go through different processes of understanding what generates this data and how does that generation affect the modeling that we're doing. So, for example, as you ask, if we know we are building a model that has a specific generated data by a certain geopolitical area, then we will know that the assumptions and the and all these what we call these protected attribute things will be infused in them. So biases and everything, because in the end, as I said, like when companies usually focus on data, they might miss a lot of things. And then this is where I said I focus on people or machine that's generate that data, because the more you understand like the people or the mechanism that generate this data, the easier for you to know what kind of biases we are going to be able to find, or being able to know, okay, what can we do to mitigate certain kind of the pitfalls or anything that might occur while you try to model. So in the end, whenever I go to companies, I say, okay, data is your oil, but if you drive back, I think the people and understand the mechanism that generate the data, there is where the miracle or the magic starts coming out. And by understanding that, then you'll be in a very good position never to do some classical mistakes of generating models that are biased or excluding other people, because you really start by understanding what is it that you're doing, what is the mechanism that generate that data that you're using to build your models or to run your business.
I completely subscribe, and it's not a simple task. So as a principal data scientist and as well director of transformation lab at NTT Data, you have a big responsibility to manage multinational layers of data, let's put it that way, but as well all the nuances and strategies. But you are as well working with IBM Watson X and all the different parts. And IBM Watson as a component of data that is quite, I would say, standardized and actually quite unique, because you can actually create a mechanism of governance integrated.
Yeah.
I know that is one area that you particularly focus, and there's all the ethics, there's the model that actually creates governance protection for a company, and as well, you interact multiple different models, even generative AI in different parts. So can you go a bit technical and strategical how you look at that when it comes to incorporating the look at data and interacting with the model of watsonx?
Yeah, so I think the biggest part that we've been working with IBM is on the governance. So as you mentioned, from coming from NTT, we work with different kind of clients at different sizes, and they are in different kind of technological journey. So we have models deployed everywhere, and this led us to have to make a partnership with IBM in order to take a journey on how we could monitor and govern the whole process of deploying models, and also monitoring how the models are performing cross clients. So there is where we went into partnership, or we went to this like also co-creating different components, because as we know, there are so many things that you cannot have out of the box, but then teaming up together, then something amazing comes out of it.
In terms of this, I would like to deep dive this. So one of the challenges when it comes to data right now is, first of all, is like you said, there's this Arabic proverb that says that power is like water. If it's small, it cleans. If it's too much, it can be a tsunami. And data is a bit the same. So how do you manage this? First of all, the big quantities of data and the small, and at the same time get the right data, because like you said before, challenge is about what the people need out of the data. You can have all the data in the world, and actually that happens a lot, I think, in most of the teams, that people keep looking at all the elements and forget the basics. And sometimes the basics is how much money we're making, or what you need to achieve, what your client wants, and very basic stuff. But how do you do this, especially when you touch with all these tsunamis of data and all these different parts?
There's a misconception that goes on that here is my data, a lot of it, throw into the model, then I will have something. So I think that's really a misconception, and I think that also comes from the principle where you start with data, then try to find what question am I answering with the data, instead of going backward and says, what question do we have, and what data is there to help us answer this question? So if you took the path of data first, then you are in a pool of an ocean, lost into what you can do, and you think if I just throw all of it, then some magical thing will come up. But on the other side is actually trying to say, what question am I trying to answer, right? And then given that question, I go like, what data do I need to answer this specific question? So we had an example here a few days ago, as I lead a team of data scientists. We had a task to do a certain kind of prediction. And classically, they started with data and trained the entire model with all the features. When I came in, I said, well, can I be with the same? But there I only used 2 features, and my model was as powerful as theirs, using all the features. And then they asked, so why would you go with very less data? And I go like, because one, I am dealing with ethics. I don't have to include all these protected attributes because they do not contribute that much. 2, it will be very easy to work with data warehouse, telling them we only need you to collect only these features. 3, it's going to be cheaper. So in the end, as I said, if you start from the other side of the question and then see what data do I need, and not start with data, then trying to ask what question am I trying to answer, then the world becomes a bit different, right? Then you're not swimming in this pool of a lot of data, which I say is then it comes back to my first notion that data is probably not the new oil, it's the people. And then maybe I can qualify, it's the people using that data that generate the new oil, right? So you can see my human side keep on going back to the question, the people, the mission, and data becomes secondary.
Yeah, that's the most difficult thing and the most important one. So one of the things you do is you work with a lot of descriptive, predictive, and prescriptive as well, visual and text analytics. Tell us a bit about that and what are the new advances? Because of course, right now, I think, like you said, if you use the data properly, you can find amazing things. You can even predict the life or the death of someone, but you can as well improve. For instance, one of the things that I've been thinking for a long time is if you use rightly data, you can actually predict financial cycles and actually protect countries, companies from going bankrupt and so forth. But the challenge is that the technology is there, the data is there, but the usage of this, and especially the education systems around this, are failing. So, what would be your vision towards making this a bit more balanced? Because it will save a lot of things, especially if you apply this to financial, economical cycles, and as well even education.
Yes. So I think at the moment everybody speaks of large language models, the world of GPT and RAGs and taking the world by storm. So for me, I think the path forward is the mixture of the classical, traditional machine learning with the new nuance of large language models. Because actually, if you combine those two, the power of something that has always worked, like statistical learning has always worked, and now comes another way to combine with the very, almost the beginning of new intelligence, if we can call it. But if you can combine the two, combine what is very classical and combine with what is very new, the marriage between those two is the path forward. Being able to present really well-tested statistical modeling with emerging new technologies such as large language models. Because in the end, I usually say when the world is in chaos, people go back to the classical statistical learning. Like when Corona hit the world, nobody went for the transformers or from deep learning models. They went back to the classical Bayesian modeling, right? So in this case, but for me, when I look in the future, I see the combination of those two, where you let the things that we have tested make its role and then combine it with the new power of the generative AI, then together you will be able to serve a lot your companies or save life or shape the course of the world as we speak.
So one of the topics that is very dear to me, and I think you touch partly this, but I want to go deep on this. So at the end of the day, as we get deep into data, we create the digital twins.
Yeah.
Okay? And we can have a digital twin of a city, a digital twin of a building, a digital twin of a plane, if you're a pilot, and a digital twin of ourselves. But as well, we are creating right now digital twins of our imagination. So augmented human beings, and then of course, Thomas in your team is actually precisely leading some of these things. So this concept of digital twin is increasingly more important, but it's still not mature enough. And at the moment, for instance, if you look at what watsonx is doing in terms of integrating a lot of different generative AI models and creating a dashboard that has a personal assistant and has as well legacy plus generative AI models, you can actually get a lot of comprehensive optimization and as well avoid a lot of issues that you would have, like costs and as well getting in trouble with regulatory and governance. So coming back to the concept of digital twin and the data around the digital twin, how do you see this, especially as being a person that has a sense of data, philosophical, and as well very technical detail?
And so I'm excited with this path of building our digital twin. So I would like to see myself doing trading now. Somewhere I have a Prayson me doing exchange. Instead of me sitting and doing myself, I have multiple Praysons doing different things. At the moment, there are some issues with deployment. I would like to have my digital me being doing that and just letting me know that he has taken care of this problem, that after having my dinner, I don't have to go to my computer because it's already been taken care of. So there's a huge potential. And at the same time, there is a good reason to be vigilant in knowing exactly what is it that we're building. And given that we're trying to shape the new world, so what kind of ethical consideration we need to take into account? What kind of biases do we have that we might like maybe our digital twins not to have, right? So now with data and with this new duplication of how the world, building the world that we want to be, I think we were in a good place to see, like, is there a way to shape this in the right way that we don't echo my assumption, my biases further? So is there a better way to combine data and say, what issues does the real person have that I need to eliminate when I try to create a digital part of me that will echo around the whole world? Because if I have an issue, an error, a bias, I don't want to multiply that to the max in the digital world, right? So if we can just control what is it that we want, I think that will be very, very interesting. But of course, that is more into philosophy, I'll say, as reality at the moment.
Yeah, there was recently a case study that AI is bringing us close to philosophy.
Yeah.
And in fact it is, because we have to rethink, because like we mentioned before, in the end of the day, creativity, intelligence is no longer just human, although we create these new interactions. So you have a big responsibility as a director of transformation lab for NTT Data. So how do you manage, first of all, the transformation and especially the digital divide that exists? Because at the moment there's the digital transformation, there's the digital divide, there's the digital as well literacy.
Yeah.
There's a lot of components. And this actually, for me, is probably one of my last questions. Is I deal with a lot of organizations around the world, politicians, ministers, and sometimes I find the most, I would say, challenging in the sense of how little people understand what is happening, even if everyone has a super device in front of them. So like you said, it's about the people, the way they do it, but there's a lot of stuff. So dealing with digital transformation, you have to deal with a lot of clients, a lot of business, and of course, being a partner of IBM, which is another giant. How do you deal with the digital divide and as well with the opportunities that you can do if you can actually improve the digital divide?
I think that's a really beautiful question. So whenever people talk about human and when we start building, I think that's then people started to talk about the right thing. So whenever we build things in Transformation Lab, of course, we usually start with people. What is it that we're trying to do? But it doesn't stop there. Actually, we include them in the process of building. So we include them in the process of maybe extracting their domain expertise, and then says, we going to start with what you think, like who are the domain expert in this field, and how can we extract their knowledge and use this knowledge as the prior. So the one best thing one has to do whenever you start transforming anything is actually to involve the people you're trying to help throughout the entire process. So not just the building phase, but testing, the contribution. They need to know exactly what is being built and why. And this needs to keep on echoing from beginning to the end. So they are, in the end, they should feel the ownership of what is being built. They should feel like their soul is part of the tool that you're building. And they're not just a byproduct of saying, here, this is a tool we have built for you. But they should feel this sense of, we have built this tool together. So in this case, they will know what are the answers they're trying to answer, what are the ethical implication of this one, what are the opportunities and limitations. So they will know the whole thing because they are part of you from beginning to the end. So whenever you do any transformation, any building of technology in this way, where the people you are building are included throughout the whole process, then we're talking the right language. Then we're transforming an actual data into oil, as you say, the new oil, where we mix actually the people and including them on how they use their data to answer their problem and their mission, right? So that's how I will wrap it all in that way.
Great way to finish. It's been a pleasure. A lot of interesting things. Congratulations for your achievements and work. And let's continue making human. We need it more than ever.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Yeah, cheers.